Uh, Good day, everyone. Uh, Today we are going to look if America can sustain uh, a two adversary problem in terms of facing two adversaries at the same time. Currently, America is involved in what are called a proxy war between itself and the Russian government in Ukraine. And the fight in Ukraine has become a distraction for America in terms of can it be able to deal with Russia and at the same time defend Taiwan uh, in the South China Sea. So we are going to look if America has the manpower, the military capability, and the resources to face these two rivals. We must remember that during the Cold War, it was only America and the USSR, but America find itself in a very different position because now it has two competing powers for which are competing against American interest, and their aim is not to replace American dominance, but to redefine. So we are going to see if the unholy marriage of China and Russia can match American influence. Uh, when the Before the war in Ukraine started, America had seen Russia as only as a spoiler, not as a major threat in terms of interest and technological pursuit and the pursuit for global dominance. China was the priority. We need to remember that during the Obama administration is when the pivot to Asia uh, policy started, where the America was to shift 60 to 70% of its naval strength to the South China Sea so that it can deal and counter the Chinese influence. Because at the time, we can remember that China had started rising and it had abandoned its policy of biding its time and growing its rise, and it had abandoned also its policy of rising peacefully, and it had started now becoming dominant in the area in terms of reclaiming islands, uh, oppressing other neighboring nations in terms of territorials, and and freedom of navigation. It had started ramping up military islands, which it said at first it had said that they were islands for shipping, but they were later militarized. So the American government under the Obama administration, so its greatest competitor to be China at the time, and so 60 to 70% of its naval forces were to be moved to the South Pacific and to maintain freedom of navigation and to try and show strength of force to China. But we come now to 2022, where Russia has decided now to invade Ukraine, and the whole dynamic has changed. Now Russia is again being seen as a very, very big threat to American and especially European peace and security, and it's seen as an aim to destabilize NATO and make it weak so that NATO cannot face global challenges and threat. And it's also meant to undermine American influence around Europe and also ensure that America cannot sustain a two-front war between China and Russia. So when you look at America as a country, as I've gone through and understand America as a country, I think their foreign policy, experts and diplomats, I think they are very smart people because since the collapse of the Nazi after the end of the World War II, America immediately started drafting alliances. You could most of them were multilateral, but also unilateral alliances. In terms of multilateral alliances that involved uh, many countries, and there was no discrimination in these alliances like NATO, United Nations, the Bretton Woods institution. Unilateral alliances were very exclusive alliances where America would approach one country or three country and create a defense pact so that especially countries that America felt that they shared, especially their ideal democratic values and they could understand each other in terms of they could share technology and all and manpower and resources amongst each other. So we look at America after the World War, and we see through this unilateral and multilateral agreement, it has ensured that America has become influential in its foreign policy, in terms of that it has been able to control the world order and shape the world peace and security according to its own image. So after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we find that America immediately started dealing with uh, you know, activating its own defense treaties and defense pacts, in terms of some treaties that it had signed years ago were dormant, and it decided that it is now going to, to reactivate them. One of the treaties I find it interesting, one of the unilateral treaties I find it interesting is the AUKUS. AUKUS is the means Australia, United Kingdom, and America. Uh, this defense and defense treaty, it ensures that it is signed between Australia, UK, and America. And the aim for this treaty is to ensure that that Australia is able to acquire nuclear-propelled submarines, Tomahawks, and other missile defense systems, especially by latest 2036, so that it can defend itself cognitively. We must remember that Australia wasn't, you know, it wasn't involved that militarily, but after the COVID situation, and when and the fact that now China is a rising power, you can see that China is dominating the South China Sea, also downwards all the way to to the islands of Papua New Guinea and all these other places. It is bringing a lot of worry in Canberra, and the Australian government is very worried. So Australia decided then to make this to enter this pact, and we must remember that they had this pact with France. Yeah, France was supposed to build submarines for the Australian government for a deal of $60 billion, but the Australian government scrapped the deal and joined the American side, and this also left a bad taste in the French government, which were very disappointed and very angry. But the submarine that France was supplying didn't seem to have the technological advantage that the Australians were looking, especially when they are now dealing with a rival like China. We must remember that after Australia called into question you know the origin of the COVID-19 virus and blamed China, China immediately slashed diplomatic consultation with Australia. Trade embargoes were done, especially on the agriculture in Australian agricultural sector and mining sector by Chinese. You must remember that Australia biggest trading partner is China. So a lot of farmers were hurt, and a lot of miners, or the business went down. So this made Australia to realize that it didn't have a friendly neighbor, and therefore it needed to bring itself under the American umbrella and acquire nuclear submarines, which have one of the latest technology. And this pact will ensure that America transfers the technology to Australia, so that its military can be capable to deal with threats like China. The only other military that has received this kind of technology is UK, because UK and America are very good partners. So through this defense pact called the AUKUS, it ensures that Australia military industry will grow. As you can see now, Australia this year has increased its military budget by 7.1%, making it one of the highest in history in the history of the Australian government. Australia plans to modernize and increase its military personnel, so that it's capable uh, uh, to face China, also to upgrade its cyber security, and put itself at a technological advantage, and also ensure that they relay information and share information with America and Britain. And looking at this, it means that now the American nuclear umbrella will come closer uh, to China, because now Australia will be under the nuclear umbrella America. We must remember that Australia also lost a very key strategic country called the Solomon Island in terms of Australia. The Solomon Islands signed back to China, where China was supposed to supply security forces to control in case there was issues of security in the island, to help tame protests and riots. And also the treaty ensured that Chinese ships could dock there, resupply, and this brought fear into the Australian government, because the Solomon Island was a very big strategic asset to the Australian government. But now it seems that the Chinese have, after years and years of investing around those islands, they have shifted the policy, and through this, Australia is now pushing heavily that the AUKUS deal is finalized. Congress, the American Congress, needs just to ratify a few things so that they can approve the technology transfer and between Australia and America. And at the point, Australia is the fact that it's the one that it needs this arsenal the most. It's the one that is investing in this treaty. We must also look at UK by itself. With AUKUS, the role of UK in AUKUS. Uh, uh, the United Kingdom also has decided to send its naval ship around the South China Sea, and it has dedicated a 5-year, deal to ensure that some of its naval fleet will be moving around the South China Sea to ensure that there's freedom of navigation and all those peace and tranquility. To ensure to try and contain China. Um, the aim of AUKUS is primarily trying to contain China as a superpower. And when you look at all these treaties, you start to see that China poses a very big threat into the global order, and it's not being received well. Well, China reaction to the AUKUS formation, it says that the AUKUS formation does not bring any peace around the area. It's just bring more instability because now it creates a new arm race where also the Chinese will be forced not to increase their military spending and military prowess so that they can be able to deal and counter uh, and counter the AUKUS. The Chinese have been very vocal against this alliance, especially since it's providing Australia with nuclear parts submarine. It's saying that this is a cover-up for nuclear weapons, for Australia to now start hosting nuclear weapons around its territory so that it can counter China. And the Chinese, on the other hand, are investing heavily in hypersonic missiles to ensure that long-range missiles, so that missiles that can reach Australia, they travel at Mach 9, 9 times the speed of sound, Mach 10, so that they can reach Australia very fast, and it's very hard for any counter. Chinese technology in this hypersonic missile has been very advancing, and the Chinese government feel that they are being cornered because of the things that are going on, and they feel that America is out to get them. So this is just one of the defense treaties. I'm not going to name all of them, but I'm just going to name a few that are active in terms of trying to counter the Russian-Chinese aggression. Another treaty we can look at is the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in terms of uh, countries that protect themselves together. An attack on one is an attack on all. So NATO is also an alliance that is hell bent in containing Russia, especially Russia and China. And NATO the other day just said that the China is its biggest strategic threat also, and it recognizes Russia also as its biggest strategic threat. There's a push now, especially since now Finland and Sweden have joined NATO. People are saying they've joined, but I've always felt they were in NATO because remember NATO military were training alongside with Finland and Sweden. Even though there was not a formal pact of saying they were in NATO, they used to train together, and the NATO military umbrella was covering Finland and Sweden somehow. Because I believed still, even though they were not in NATO, there's no way you could attack Finland and Sweden and NATO will not get involved, or the American government. Finland by itself has a treaty with Britain of defense. So NATO is another umbrella in which it tries uh, to protect itself from Russia. If you look at NATO's budget vis-a-vis Russia, you can see that NATO budget it's 20 times the size of Russia. So if I was to break out, I don't think the Russians can have the manpower to contain or stop NATO. But out of that NATO budget, you find almost three-quarters is the American government budget. So that's why people are worried that can America sustain, because NATO is America. You know, the dragon, the hydra might have 10 or 20 or 30 heads, but let's be honest, it's only one head that counts, and that's the American head. America military budget is 700 to 800 billion dollars. So if America was engaged in a war with Russia, can it have the same manpower to sustain a war with China? But through now the NATO umbrella and pushing for 2% of GDP defense budget, it aims to raise the finances to be able to form and to counter this rise of Russia by fighting Russia. If all countries adhere to the 2% budget, then there can be enough manpower and to contain and stop Russia. We must remember that Germany has decided to rearm. It's spending 12% of its budget starting this year, probably let's say next year. That will be 100 billion euros. That's over 110 billion dollars. So that this will make Germany the strongest and most potent army in Europe. So I think the aim also for Germany spending this money is to ensure that America doesn't find itself as the only, the only contributor to this war, or the one that's losing all its resources and expanding. I think the aim is also to ensure that the rise of countries like Germany, UK, France in terms of military spending ensures that Europe itself does not rely too much on America when it comes in case America finds itself fighting a two-war front. So for me, I feel like Germany spending this much is more of a countermeasure to ensure that it can contain Russia, because now the military spending of Germany is way above of Russia. If you put France there, if you put Britain, countries like Finland have joined NATO. So you can see that there is a pushback in trying to counter the I'd say the Russian threat. And before I go to another defense, I don't want to talk about some of the defense treaties uh, that America finds itself. So America has a few defense treaties in terms of dealing with its adversary, and these are called minilateral treaties in terms of ensuring that they are very exclusive treaty, not a bit discriminatory, but and not for everyone. They're not like the UN or NATO, or they are exclusive. So the first treaty is AUKUS. Australia, UK, and US, a defense treaty. Of sharing information and trying to help Australia achieve, the same defense capabilities as America and Britain. The next treaty is the United States and Australia are treaty allies under 1951. New Zealand, United States alliance, and the United States and the UK are member of the North Atlantic Treaty. So that's NATO. The United States, Australia, and UK are also along with Canada and New Zealand, are part of the Five Eye Treaty. It was signed in 1946. The aim of the Five Eye Treaty is intelligence sharing group. Okay, another one. The United States, Japan, Australia, and India are of the Quad Treaty quadrilateral. It's called the Quadrilateral Alliance. And it was formed in 2007, but it went dormant, but was rebought again in 2017 because of rise of China and the fact that the Chinese expansion, especially into the LAC area in India. From the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, that's the Quad. Australia and the UK are, along with Malaysia, New Zealand, and Singapore, part of the five-power defense arrangement. So you can see that when it comes to the Asian side, America has a lot of unilateral treaties to ensure that it contains the threat of China and Russia. And if you look at a treaty like Quad itself, Quad is another treaty between India, Australia, Japan, and America. And the aim of this treaty is is to address security issues in the Indo-Pacific. And you find, and it was called the South China Sea, but Americans are very smart and they changed the name to the Indo-Pacific, because when you start saying it's the South China Sea, and especially when there are contentious issues where China is saying this is our land, this is our place, by saying the South China Sea, you're propagating the lie that this is Chinese territory. So immediately the American foreign policy experts and the State Department, they changed it. It's now called the Indo-Pacific. It means the same. So the Quad is between Australia, India, Japan, and America. They had a meeting this year, and the meeting was in Tokyo, and they will have another one next year. The Quad was formed in 2007, as I read, and it went dormant, but came back in 2017 when Chinese aggression started becoming very high in that area. Also, India is very, very, very concerned about because India and China, they are two superpowers, almost the same population, and India is very wary of China. So the Quad was formed to counter China, even though they say that it's an agreement to help grow Asia. Apart from it being a military defense strategy organization, it helps with trying to promote development infrastructure in the Asian countries and trying to counter China development infrastructure like the Belt and Road. During the COVID time, it invested 50 billion into the production of vaccine, into the production of vaccine and mitigating the cause of the pandemic. Out of 600 million vaccine produced, more than 250 billion went to Asian countries. So the Quad is not only trying to be a military alliance, but trying to be itself as a helping hand. This year, the Quad met in Tokyo, and China and Russia weren't happy, and they did military drills. Their bombers, their nuclear bombers, their planes flew over near Japan. And when you look at all these, you start seeing that, you know, like John Pillager, his documentary when he was saying the coming war in China, it seems that, China is seen as the biggest threat coming to the future. And through alliances like the Quad, the Five Eye, the Five Eye intelligence sharing between New Zealand, Australia, America, and Canada and UK, the Five Eye aim is to now, especially now, to relay intelligence between these countries on the issues of China, the rising power of China. You once can say there is like a conspire to counter China, and try, and China is so much being seen as a threat. If you look at uh, NATO military budgets, you realize that NATO has 30 members, and the total military spending of all militaries in the world is 2 trillion, slightly above 2 trillion. But out of these 2 trillion, 1.09 trillion is from NATO members. So this is like over 50% is from NATO members. Yeah. Apart from NATO members, these multilateral treaties that I was telling you about, mini treaties that America, defense treaties that has with other country. Let's say, for example, the Quad. The Quad military budget exempting America between India, Australia, and Japan accounts for 141 billion USD. So the NATO members account for 1.9 trillion. The Quad members account for 141 billion. I repeat again, the NATO member account for 1.09 trillion. The Quad member account for 141 billion USD. And now there are these bilateral treaties, many treaties between America and a country. American South Korea, American Israel, American Taiwan, American Singapore, American Sweden, American Switzerland, American Qatar, American Philippines, American Denmark, American Malaysia, American New Zealand, American Thailand, American Bahrain. All these treaties, bilateral treaties, account for 133 billion in terms of military spending. So when you combine NATO, Quad, and the reason I didn't say AUKUS, because Quad, some countries in AUKUS are in Quad and NATO. So there's no need of putting them together. When you combine NATO Quad and these bilateral minilateral treaties, you find that the total American defense treaties and American partners, they spend 1.3 trillion on military spending, vis-a-vis the 2 trillion. Let's remember that all militaries of the world are spending 2 trillion. You know, the first time in history, military spending across the world has reached $2 trillion. So it means the military industrial complex is growing. And when you look at all this money, you know, the biggest supplier of these arms is the American government. So all these countries somehow under the American defense umbrella. So if America and its allies are spending 1.36 trillion out of 2 trillion total of the world, you know, when you look at that, you can see that they are spending almost, you know, 50%, 60%. If I'm not wrong, 60% to 7, you know, 50%. Yeah, 50% to 60% of all military spending are spent by the Americans and its allies. So it means that American allies, and I think through this spending, they can sustain any aggressor. And when you go and see Russia and China and its allies, because they own the allies that seem to that they can come to China and Russia is Iran and North Korea. They spend 367 billion in total. And when you look at, it's very funny because American and their allies spend almost 5 times more than China, Russia, and its ally. So China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea spent $367 billion. With China, with the Chinese budget accounting for almost 80%. American ally was spent $1.3 trillion. So can America sustain a two-front war with two superpowers? I think we can make that decision. And for me, I think it's a very good yes, because when you look at the American strategy in trying to implement and trying to contain itself as a military power, it's very smart. And when you look at these other countries, especially the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they're all increasing their military spending. You know, Finland, so Germany, Australia is increasing. You know, now defense cooperation. You know, there are even talks for NATO to expand into Asia to include South Korea and Japan. Uh, you know, there are talks also to, you know, to include Taiwan as a very to have a unilateral deal with Taiwan, where Taiwan will now be fully under American military umbrella. And when you look at, you know, at the military hardware that's going to Taiwan, it shows you that even though people are saying Americans are losing power with these kind of treaties and these kind of alliances, I think this was the smartest move that the American foreign policy experts did. And when you look at the numbers, America is bet on winning this war, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's the resources and the amount that counts. Sometimes people say, yeah, it doesn't matter that much, but I feel like 70 to 80% it matters. Probably there might be issue in coordinating this kind of resources and military power, but I feel like America has ensured that the people that it has, the countries that it has entered this alliance with, they are more likely minded. So it's very hard to have issues in terms of understanding and working together. And looking at this, I expect, you know, America to continue solidifying its military strength and military prowess around the world. And even some countries that I haven't mentioned there, which don't have a pact with America, if you look at how the economies are behaving, have behaved for a long time, how their politicians, they've always leaned to the American side, and so America as a country, you know, they can look up to. So, you know, the talks of Russia being isolated and being alone could actually be true, because when you look at this, you can see that it will be very hard for this country to ditch, you know, the American military umbrella, the American military might, you know, under them, the American economic might, you know, that has supported the economies, the democratic institution. And now more than ever, you can see that America is trying to push back on China and Russia, but it's a wait and see game. But as of for now, if you ask me, I think America is winning. Europe might be going through an issue right now, but I feel like America strategically it knows what it's doing. Uh, I think that's what is was it for today, guys. Please subscribe, share, and like. Uh, I'll be doing these videos more, and let's meet next time. And also engage me on the comments. There's some of you have been engaging me and supporting, and I'm really appreciative. And thanks a lot. Bye. Cheers.